We're back. Adam Rank along with LaQuan Jones. It is the opening week of the Scott Fish Bowl, so we thought it would be appropriate to talk some fantasy football across our respective channels. So normally if you're tuning in for the Rams talk or the Bears talk, we'll talk about Rams and Bears, but we're also going to get into the fantasy options. LaQuan, how you feeling?
Feeling good, man. Feeling fresh, man. Look, man, I'm looking forward to this fantasy season, dominate my Scott Fish Bowl, man. You already know how I'm going to be in the fantasy streets, dominating, talking my trash.
All right. Well, we'll get to that, and we're going to do the running backs today right after Shane starts the show.
Welcome to our Fantasy Island.
All right. Welcome to Fantasy Island. And again, we are going to be talking about running backs today. And listen, LaQuan, I don't want to sit here. And I don't want to belabor the point because I know there are a couple of hot button issues that everybody wants to know about, everybody wants to get into. I am going to be presenting my list. We didn't collaborate on this list. I'm just giving my tier. This is going to be an opportunity for LaQuan to go ahead and just be like, nope, Rank doesn't know. Which is fine. And Shane, so if we could, without further ado, here is the tier one of running backs for me, and it's very small. And it's Bijan Robinson, it's Saquon Barkley, and it's Ashton Genty. We'll talk about all three of these guys. Who is your 1.01 running back?
I agree here. It has to be Bijan, man. That's a younger freak athlete of a Saquon Barkley, and I'm expecting some type of regression in Saquon, so I have to go with this 1-2 right here.
Okay, let me ask you, though, is there anything about Michael Penix or anything that's going on with the Atlanta Falcons, a little uncertainty that would make you hesitate to take Bijan, or is it just jump right in?
Absolutely not, because look, when we look at last season, who was on the sticks, which is Zach Robinson, which falls very close from that Sean McVay tree. He understands, get the ball in your best playmaker's hands, and Bijan's running the most routes out of all these running backs out there last season. And Bijan is such a huge threat with the ball in his hand in open space. So like, we're just talking about him as a pass catcher, and in between the tackles, outside the tackles, this guy's electric and explosive and can take it to the house at any point. The same way we talk about Saquon Barkley is the same way we could talk about Bijan Robinson.
Let's talk about Saquon Barkley, because in addition to last season winning tons of people fantasy football championships, won the Philadelphia Eagles a Super Bowl title, although he wasn't necessarily the biggest star of the Super Bowl, but you get what I'm getting at. Yeah. This season, he's got that. He had all those playoff games. He's now got the Madden cover. A lot of people won't draft Saquon Barkley because, like, oh, look at CMC last year. But CMC did put together back-to-back great seasons for the 49ers before he fell off last year. Are you hesitating? Bijan Robinson's off the board. You want to take a running back. Are you still comfortable drafting Saquon Barkley?
Man, I'm actually one of those guys, like, if it ain't Bijan, I'm not drafting a running back in the first round. And again, I don't think that Saquon's going to like fall off the cliff like CMC did due to injury or anything like that. I just feel as though there's going to be a regression in certain areas of where it matters, and that's the touchdowns, because obviously the tush push has been approved. I feel like they're going to go back and use and abuse it now, because it's like kind of like in your face, like you guys tried to get rid of it. Now we're going to do it even more. So I feel like that's more so like the narrative or type of aura that's going over there in Philly. But again, I don't expect the same production from Saquon to hit 2,000 yards. I don't expect him to cut up my Rams like he did last year twice. So I feel like there's going to be some of come back down to earth, that he is still a running back and he's still getting older. He's taken all those bumps and bruises. He played more football than any of these other running backs that we're going to be talking about today. So there has to be some type of regression that he takes a step back in these rankings and where people are trying to project to put him at.
Yeah, and we're talking about the running backs here. I almost wanted to just put Bijan Robinson in his own tier because, like you, I agree. If I am not getting Bijan Robinson, there's a pretty good chance I'm not leaving the first round with a running back. And we talked yesterday, and by the way, anybody who missed yesterday's shows, you can go back to our respective channels, listen to us talking about the quarterbacks. We did mention Jalen Hurts. You know, every year I think that Jalen Hurts is going to regress in his touchdown totals. But for the reasons that you just said right there, it's not going to shock me if Jalen Hurts gets 20 rushing touchdowns this season, just out of spite, just knowing the way that Nick Sirianni is. So it makes a lot of sense. The one, I guess, that a lot of people are questioning here, and I see a lot of people in the comments, and they're talking about, like, I'm not drafting. He's going to fine. Like that. I understand. Last year, anybody who drafted CMC or CeeDee Lamb or one of those guys who took a step, I understand the mindset. You want to feel comfortable. And, there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of options. So it's not like you were beholden to take it. Ashton Genty, and I go back and forth on this because talk to me in 3 weeks. I might have Ashton Genty as my number 2 guy. I just feel in an offense that is being directed by Pete Carroll with Geno Smith, a capable quarterback who can burn you some credible pass catching targets in that offense. Ashton Genty is going to come in and get an ample opportunity. I do not believe that Pete Carroll is going to shy away from him. If anything, I don't think I'm high enough on Ashton Genty.
Now, I can respect Genty in this tier, and I can respect Genty in a lot of people top 5s. It's just that he's still rookie at the end of the day, which makes me a little hesitant because, again, before I even started this conversation, I said I'm fading outside of the first round, any running back outside of Bijan Robinson. But Genty has 300 touches on the table for him, where I feel like a lot of people feel excited about that. They feel like with Chip Kelly on the sticks and Pete Carroll obviously wanting to run the rock, I think Genty falls in that category where Pete Carroll actually hands the workload to the RB1, where he's not looking for that 1-2 punch. I mean, Chris Carson, man, what a great career. Ended way too soon, but he always had somebody behind him that wanted to run that 1-2 punch. Genty doesn't have that. Genty doesn't even fit the mold of a Chris Carson. He is the Marshawn Lynch of the Pete Carroll that can hold that 300 carries and be able to ascend with the touches. My issue is the Raiders as a whole. I don't know if that O-line is going to be great. I mean, last year we saw the product they put out there. I mean, a lot of folks in the fantasy streets were in on Zamir White. I was one of them, just based on how he finished the last season. But it's like, this is still the Raiders at the end of the day. We don't know if this run game is going to be in the top 10 or in the elites of conversation where these touches are going to be valuable for Ashton Genty. He can have 300 touches, but where are the touchdowns? Where's the dump balls from Geno? Because we know Geno likes to get aggressive sometimes to go downfield. And when you have Jacoby Myers, when you have Jack Besh, who can stretch the field as well, one of the most physical wide receiver prospects in this draft, by the way. And then you have Brock Bowers, who's obviously the focus of this offense. Not a lot is saying that Ashton Genty is the core focus of this offense. He may not be the motor. He may not be the guy that's going to be having this offense getting the kickstart that they need all the time because they have options, So like, that's why I feel like I'm a little hesitant on the rookie to put him this high or have that type of value on him because look, Rank, we're going to talk about another running back down here that, are in your rankings, but I'm looking at it like this. Like, I can get that same production or that same upside and hope from a guy who's proven it to us before, but I'll save his name until we start rolling.
David Montgomery? No.
I
know. I know. Everybody who's coming in, and I see it. Like, I can read. Rookie. I'm like, I'll tell you though, Bucky Irving was pretty good last year. A lot of people, listen, if you don't want to listen to me on anything else, and I'm fine with that because I think my Bears prediction just got released today. That's fine. Running backs, although I can't, I cannot plant my flag in it too hard because last year, Bucky Irving, I was a big make sure you're drafting Saquon Barkley guy. Go back, check the records. But I was also into Kamani Vidal. So it's like that, like not
Me
everything.
Too, Rank.
It's one of those things. It's so much like playing golf where you're like, hey, had a lot of great shots, but then I did put one in the water with Kamani Vidal. And I'll take that. I'll blame Jeff Mann. No, I'm kidding. That was on me. I really went back and watched him at Troy and thought he was great. Don't draft him though. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the major issues. We will have episodes later where we can get a little bit deeper on some of these guys. I do know, and just judging from the comments, I know a lot of people, these are guys, well, actually, we're missing one. Let's roll to tier 2, Shane, if we can, because, everybody's like, where's Jahmyr Gibbs? So tier 2, for those of you who are listening as an audio podcast, just watch the YouTube, Captain Winks. You know who you are. Just listen to it. So at number 4, so our top 3 are Bijan, Saquon, Genty. Me, this is mine. Tier 2 goes Derrick Henry. And when you're tier 2, I should have broken this up even smaller because I think that Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bucky Irving. Actually, I think Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs could actually be considered tier 1 guys. But then you have Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane. Is it Achane? Like he changed his name like 30 times. And I had a producer yelling like
Achane.
A-Chain. Like, I had a producer yelling in my ear and it was wrong. And I'm like, I'm going to call the Dolphins today. And that's him. CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, who I love a lot. And of course, Kenneth Walker, the third. I have a big tier 2 because, like you, if I'm punting on, and you've almost convinced me to give up on the dream of Ashton Genty, Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Devon A-Chain, CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker. Pick one guy. Who are we looking at? Who excites you out of this group?
So who excites me? Now I want to just put a pin back
you're like, you're punting on Ashton Genty. You're waiting to the second round to draft a running
Derrick
back.
Henry, right?
Yeah. Okay.
It's Derrick Henry. Like, how is it not? Because he's proven us from time and time again. When I look at Derrick Henry, he's a freak athlete. I compare him to Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, Cristiano Ronaldo's getting up there in age, but these guys spend the money and investment on their bodies in the offseason. I mean, look, these guys are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in the offseason in conditioning. So with that type of discipline, with that type of diet, Derrick Henry is going to be the freak athlete to play for many, many years, where we're going to keep on trying to count him out. The new shiny toy with Ashton Genty is in the house. This is where Derrick Henry ADP falls a little bit. You get him in that early second round. You could sit there and take a wide receiver. I have many leagues right now where I'm with Puka Nacua, Derrick Henry, Malik Neighbors, Derrick Henry. Like that, those are the 1-2s right there that I absolutely love, and that is a smash for me.
Yeah, I love Derrick Henry too. And I was even remarking to somebody the other day, all of the leagues that I won, or the leagues that I won last year, were typically the leagues where I drafted late in the first round, where I ended up with Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. And it was an unbeatable combination. Like, wow. People couldn't move me off. Like, it was, and I was getting a lot of Bucky Irving too, because I was picking him up late. Because I actually would not draft another running back until I started picking off the rookies like Bucky Irving and Kamani Vidal and some of the other guys. I did want to ask though about Jahmyr Gibbs, because I was on the Jim Rome, the after hour with the Sklar brothers, and they actually were pumping up Jahmyr Gibbs pretty heavily, because I'm a little skeptical, because I know how you feel about Jared Goff. The Lions offensive line has lost Frank Ragnow, but is Jahmyr Gibbs one of those guys where it doesn't matter because he plays so well in space?
It does feel like, you know, it doesn't matter with the changes that happened there in Detroit, because Jahmyr Gibbs, when he's given the full reins, when David Montgomery was out with injury, he looks like he can handle the workload. He looks like he could be that RB1 that you can really rely on week to week. But there's the other side of the coin that does exist, though. Like, there's no Ben Johnson. Like, I was able to connect with Jason Kabinda. Now, he's been in-house with Ben Johnson, Johnny Moe, who's now taken over as the offensive coordinator. He feels confident, and so does Jared Goff feel confident that Johnny Morton can go out there and execute somewhat similar of a Ben Johnson type offense, where Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty still would split. But what if these splits are kind of different from what we've seen with this Sonic and Knuckles combination? So taking Jahmyr Gibbs as the fourth running back off the board in some of these ADPs out here right now, it does feel a little risky, because again, there is that home run upside. There is that high, you know, top 3 running back at the end of the season type ordeal. But then there's the other side of the coin that makes me fearful of where I'm not a guy that's going to gamble on a running back in the first round, because I've been burned way, way too many times when this happened. This goes back to all the way Le'Veon Bell holding out, and I'm the idiot at the end of the draft happy that I got Lev Bell, and then he's holding out. So there's situations like that where I've learned my lessons, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is still an incredible player. It's just that there's still some question marks, there's still some unknowns, there's a gamble there. So I might pivot to another running back. It's
funny because the Le'Veon Bell holdout year, I was doing a draft that season. It was 2018. It was the day that Khalil Mack was traded to the Bears. I was doing a draft, wasn't paying attention because it was an early morning draft, and didn't know, and I auto-picked Le'Veon Bell. And I was so mad because I knew he was going to be a bust, and it was the worst thing ever. Bucky Irving, though, last season did very well for a lot of us, even though everybody tried to tell me Rachaad White, was Rachaad White dead? I'm like, no, but Bucky Irving's better. Do you feel like he continues his ascent?
Yes, I do think he continues because of what we saw last year. I do not want him to be the workhorse type. Like, I don't want his touches to get too high. I want him to still be used efficiently, and hopefully whatever Liam Cohen, the special sauce that he left over there in Tampa Bay, honestly, he needs to be used in a 1-2 punch because he's that lightning. You know, you have Rashad White as the pass catcher. You have Sean Tucker there as well. That could be that thumper. There is a three-headed monster here, but Bucky is the most relevant out of this three-headed monster because how explosive he is, how he is between the tackles. He's like tap dancing at the line of scrimmage, and guys are just jumping at him. They can't touch him. That's a lot of what he did in Oregon. And like when in 2023 in Oregon, when he shared that backfield with Jordan James, who's now on the 49ers, which I think he's the upgraded of Jordan Mason, but we'll get to that very later in the tiers when we start talking 49ers running backs. But I definitely feel as though, you know, with Bucky Urban in a 1-2 punch, that's where he is the most dangerous. So I definitely think he still will ascend with Rashad White there on a contract year, and he'll be able to give us the same output that we got last season.
Yeah, I actually like the way he was involved in the passing game down the stretch as well. And I think that could be a bigger facet of his game coming into this season. Josh Jacobs, last year, all the Packer fans were telling me, oh, once he gets into this cold weather, he's going to be so good. And you're like, he's fine. I have him right here at number 7. How do you feel about Josh Jacobs?
Josh Jacobs is the most underrated running back, man, when we talk about these tiers and these rankings, because honestly, I'm so comfortable waiting in that third round for a running back and him falling to me as my RB1 because there's no real threat behind him right now. There's no threat there in that offense that where Josh Jacobs doesn't be included in the game plan on Sunday. Like he is the function of this offense when there's all confusion amongst the pass catchers. And even then, he's still seeing targets. He's still running routes. There's literally nobody behind him on that backfield that I feel comfortable saying, like, you know, he might spell him. You know, Elijah Wilson was cool. Like he was explosive at times, but he wasn't like somebody that's notable to take away touches from Josh Jacobs that can clearly handle like 300 to 350 touches. So he's one of the most underrated workhorses here where he is a gem if you're able to get him in the third round as your RB1.
Yeah, it's a pretty good strategy to wait for one of these guys. I do believe that Josh Jacobs could easily fall to the third round. I don't think A-Chain falls to the third round. I know a lot of people love him. Anytime you sort of besmirch Devon get the table. They get the table for me because people love him. The only thing that worries me about A-Chan, oh, by the way, I should have mentioned these are all based on half-point PPR. So this is going to be a little bit different. So you were kind of like, wait a minute. That's why A-Chain is not as high because that's where he made all his points, catching the ball out of the backfield. And they saw last year in Miami, like this guy cannot run the ball 300 times or whatever it is. We got to limit it. And he gets less effective because that was the big thing is his yards per carry went from 7.2 to like 4 point something. And once they gave him too many touches, so they're like, we can't use him that way. I look at this.
Kind of like Bucky Irvin. That's the Bucky Irvin effect right there. That's what I was talking about right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do with him? Like I sort of avoid. I know people love him, and I'm happy to let other people draft him. And if I'm wrong, like so be it. But I'm happy to let other people deal with that. I would rather go with Bucky Irving personally, but I'm happy waiting on a running. I'd rather have Josh Jacobs, and I say that as a guy who's wearing an 18 hat. That's not a B, that's an 18. But for those of you not watching, I'm wearing a Bears hat. Surprise. But what about A-Chan?
A-Chan, he has top 5 potential, but this is the thing though. Things have to fall for him in the right way. And this means that Tua has to stay healthy. Mike McDaniel has to get this offense back to being a vertical attack. This offense needs to be threatening and dangerous as it was in 2023. Last year was the worst offense that we've seen from Mike McDaniel in that Dolphins staff. And I honestly think, A-Chan having that upside is why so many people are in love with him, because they see the potential there that he could be explosive. He could be a pass catcher. He can compete with Darren Waller in this offense for targets, to be honest. And Tua's going to have a high check down rate, just being that they don't want to have that ball in his hand, for a very long time. So A-Chan definitely becomes a valuable pick, but his price is sitting in that second in the middle round. And like how you said, Bucky Irvin's still on the board there. So I'd rather pivot to Bucky Irvin, where I know there's more stability in that offense. There's more of his role of understanding instead of Tua's hurt now. We bring in Snoop Huntley, or we bring in Tim Boyle. I'm pretty sure he's made his rounds on different teams there. So it's like whoever's going to be the backup, then it's like you have to rely on efficiency. You have to rely on those scoring opportunities that may not be there for Devon A-Chan.
And it's interesting too, because a lot of this does come down to the quarterback. Now we had Jordan Love downgraded yesterday in our quarterback tiers, and a big reason why is I feel like their receivers are straight dukes. They're gonna rely more on Josh Jacobs, which is why I have him higher than probably a lot of people. So, and CMC is also one of those guys. CMC, Jonathan, like these are two worrisome players.
Yeah.
What is the price point for you to get in? I really don't want to get away from CMC, but at the same time, I'm not using a pick, and you're not either. No, we're not getting him in the first 2 rounds. And if somebody wants to take that risk, that's fine. I'm happy. I think he's got the ability, and we're projecting a little bit here, but I'm not taking. I would rather take surefire wide. I'd actually rather have Brock Bowers in the second round than CMC or Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. And that's a conversation. That's a pivot option. You can go Trey McBride. You can go Brock Bowers instead of taking that risk with CMC. And like how I'm looking at it as is like, do you want to get burned again? Like, do you want your fantasy rosters to fall apart based on a guy that has shown us that, he's been banged up before? Like, we've seen this story happen before coming out of Carolina, where he only played 13 games in those 2 seasons before he was out of there into San Francisco, and we're kind of still on same par. He led the league in touches. And then what do we expect from these type of running backs taking these bumps and bruises as he's getting older in age? And this is why they drafted Jordan James. This is why they have Isaac Guerrero behind there to keep this run game alive, because a lot has fallen apart with the 49ers. And as a Rams fan, I'm happy to see that happen. Let it burn. But at the end of the day, for fantasy managers out there, like feeling and chasing that old core memory of CMC being the 101, I think we need to really identify the red flags and kind of take a step back. And I personally, I don't feel as though where his ADP right now is going to be justifiable of the output or risk, for that bang for your buck, where I could just get a Josh Jacobs, I can get a freaking Chase Brown, I can get a Kenneth Walker way later and just have that, that peace, that comfort on Sundays that I don't have to worry about a running back that's trying to get his burst back to try to stay healthy and limited touches. Like, it is what it is, like I feel like CMC, he had a great run. He won me my 2017, championship in my home league with Todd Gurley and the CMC combination, but I'm letting that feeling go, Rank. Like it's the past now. I have to move on to younger and more stable youth, running backs now.
No, and it's true. And just as a reminder for everybody who's just following along or just joining us right now, these are tiers. And if you feel that Chase Brown is a better option for you than Josh Jacobs, that's fine. We're just kind of grouping these guys together, and it's better to have them into tiers, because you kind of know where they are. And if you wanted to put Chase Brown ahead of CMC and Jonathan Taylor, I do want to ask a quick question about Jonathan Taylor, though. Does the quarterback situation, does it make you less inclined or more inclined to take Jonathan Taylor, given that we don't know who the signal caller is going to be, but it feels like it's going to be Daniel Jones early in the season?
Another thing about Jonathan Taylor that a lot of people are forgetting, that the back end of the season is where he saw a majority of his rushing yards. And like, we have to remember the core of the fantasy season is the first 14 weeks. And I understand a lot of folks, they love the week 15 through 17, surges, they're league winners and et cetera, et cetera. But Jonathan Taylor 3 seasons in a row has been banged up. And I definitely feel as though the quarterback situation makes it a little bit more, I would say, foggy of like taking him off the board, because it's like, how productive is this offense going to be with Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones? Even though I think Daniel Jones is like a deep dive sleeper just based on his mobile capabilities, but it's more so of like, how good is this Colts offense going to be for Jonathan Taylor to have this RB1 season? And I think, a lot of people look at last season, how he finished up playing against the Panthers. Like, everybody ran against the Panthers. Rank, you could have put up 50 yards against the Panthers last year.
I was good, though. I was good back in the day.
Yeah. All right. So there we go. So it's like Jonathan Taylor is another one that has the red flags, but a lot of people are just chasing of the upside, the vision that hasn't happened yet,
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because Chase Brown, as we move on down this list, Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker III are 2 running backs who I love. And again, if you want to move these guys up and down the rankings, and you might talk to me in 2 days, 2 weeks, I might have these guys ahead of CMC and Jonathan Taylor, because I get really scared sometimes. And it's easier for me to talk myself out of players than it is to talk myself into players. However, the one thing though, and this is, something that everybody needs to keep in mind, that let's say you go into your draft and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go with Chase Brown in the third or something like that. Like that's what you're thinking. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker in the third or the fourth or whatever it is. If you are doing that, if that is going to be your strategy, make sure that you don't get pinned in with like, and this is why we break these things up into tiers, is I had like sometimes people have a strategy like I want Chase Brown. And then they end up getting Jamar Chase. And then they forget about it. And then they get to the third round, like, well, wait, I don't want the running back and the wide receiver. I don't want to stack them. And then you gotta panic. This is why, again, it's always good to have these things in tiers, because if you're sitting there, you're like, make sure. And I some people like the stacks. I personally do not. The quarterback receiver stack, I love. Running back, wide receiver stack, I hate. Even if it's the Cincinnati Bengals, because that'll be because when you need them the most, that's the T. Higgins game. Like that is, you're pretty much setting up T. Higgins.
Or the Mike Gesicki random game.
Oh my God. I was just thinking, I was just going to say Mike Gesicki. So if you're doing this, and this is a strategy, if we're punting on the running backs in the first two rounds, we missed out on Bijan Robinson. We don't want to take a risk on anybody else. Make sure that you're like, okay, well, I'm going to draft CeeDee Lamb, or I'm going to draft Malik Neighbors or Justin Jefferson. There's a lot of guys that you can go with, which is kind of why, and we'll talk about this with the wide receivers, why I'm not off Jamar Chase, but I like Chase Brown so much that it's like, I'd rather have Justin Jefferson. Oh, that doesn't matter. If I have Justin Jefferson and Chase Brown, I like that as much as if I had Jamar Chase and Josh Jacobs. Actually, I might like Josh Jacobs and Jamar Chase better. But anyways, just keep an eye out. But these are things to think about as we roll through this. And by the way, I think one of my kids is coming home, so we might have a surprise visitor. But let's move to tier 3. And by the way, a quick reminder for those that I see people that are joining us right now. Where were you? We talked about Bijan. You got to go back. We covered. We kind of skipped over Kenneth Walker. We like Kenneth Walker because I want to get into some of these names. And we've talked about everybody. If you wanted to hear our take on Saquon Barkley, you got to go back and watch it. It's worth it. We talk about everybody. We're not getting too deep into the sleepers. We've spent a lot of time already on the first two tiers because I think it's important. And these are the most important questions that I get, at least from me, is everybody wants to know about these guys. Tier 3, this is where we're going to spend the rest of our time because I feel like these are important names to get over. Kyren Williams. They've drafted guys. They've brought in guys. Nobody has been able to knock off Kyren Williams yet, but is this the season that it happens?
I think, we look at the last 2 seasons of guys not being able to knock off Kyren Williams. I look at this season, I pay very closely attention to the Rams, obviously. With McVay vowing like more versatility. And I hear that word, and then I see the excitement that he has taking Jarquez Hunter off the board. And it's like, oh, I see the versatility that you're looking for. And what inspired that versatility was an interview that he was speaking about Liam Cohen, of how he was running that offense and how it was looking, different disguises, different looks, and et cetera. So obviously, this is a copycat league, So when you bring in Jarquez Hunter, what does he bring? He brings ball security and explosiveness. These are 2 things that Kyren Williams does not possess. He put the ball on the ground these last 2 seasons, the most out of all running backs. He is not explosive. The Rams were at the bottom of the table when it comes to explosive plays out of that backfield. So you bring in Jarquez Hunter for a reason, to be the 1-2 punch. So I think a lot of people are banking on Kyren Williams to get the max load, to be over 75% of the snap share of the carry share. No, there's different changes because the touchdowns are even going to regress here because obviously adding Devontae Adams, our biggest problems was the red zone. And a lot of people don't understand that. Like, we were not throwing the ball in the red zone because Cooper Kupp not healthy enough to get through his breaks to be as dangerous as he was in the red zone. Puka Nacua, obviously all the attention is going to be on him, but we've seen Air Puka at times. He caught a couple touchdowns in the red zone, but that's not enough season long for 17 games. So Kyren's production is going to drop significantly. And I think a lot of people are not really accounting for the versatility and the new guys that are in the building now for the Rams. So Kyren, to me, he sits at the top of this tier 3 with the possibility that I'm wrong, that, McVay goes back to his old ways. And it took until the Saints game for basically everybody just complaining like, yo, where's Blake Corum? And then we started seeing Blake Corum get sprinkled in, and then there was an actual instilled plan for Blake Corum going into the playoffs, but he gets hurt in that Seahawks game and never get to see it. So there is a red flag on Kyren in these drafts because everybody's expecting the same workload, which is probably not going to be true.
No, I get it. I get it. But again, people tried to talk me out of Kyren last year. Worked out pretty well. I love Kyren Williams.
I was one of them.
I love
him too. But I have this thing, man. You can't put the ball on the ground, man.
All right, that's fair. It's reminiscent. You're too young to remember Cleveland Gary. But that was a talented running back in the 90s who, talent-wise, you could have been better than Emmitt Smith, but he couldn't hold on to the rock. Breece Hall, though. So this is what I love about what we do is we get people hitting us up. Hey, should I keep Breece Hall over? And I didn't even think it was a question of like I forget who the guy's other keeper was, but it was garbage he got. And I go, keep Breece Hall. He's like, really? I'm like, then do what you want to do. Like, don't ask me. Don't ask me to argue with me. Just be like, hey, I've been thinking, because like, honestly, if one of my friends hits me up and it's like, hey, I'm thinking about keeping Jaden Daniels. Is that a good idea? Yes. Because I'm not going to talk somebody out of something that they want to do. Unless it's an absolute malpractice of, I'm going to keep Justin Tucker. Like, no, you might not want to do that. Like, that's not a good person. And you don't want to do that. However, if somebody is like, hey, I'm thinking about letting Breece Hall go because I'm going to keep this guy, I'd be like, okay, fine. But if you're asking me my opinion, I like Breece Hall. He's like, what about Justin Fields? I'm like, what about Justin Fields? Like, the Bears had good running backs when Justin Fields was playing. Yeah. Like, don't be that. Like, if anything, he should be better this year. I really like Breece Hall.
Yes. I like Breece Hall too, and I think he's a steal in that third round too. Like, he's in that bag where if you're having question marks in the first two rounds about the running backs, Breece Hall is going to be there for you available. And I think, people are not really looking at this offense of how it's influence and the inspiration, because Tanner Strand, he's been in the building with Ben Johnson over there in Detroit. So we're already getting Aaron Glenson. He wants to use Braylon Allen. He wants to utilize Breece Hall. He's our RB1. He's our guy. The trade rumors are in the dirt now. Breece Hall can honestly see 70 catches. Like, Rank, do you remember when Tampa Bay had Leonard Fournette and Rashad White, and Leonard Fournette had 73 catches?
Amazing.
This could be Breece Hall. Leonard Fournette finished as the RB12 that year. This could be on the table for Breece Hall, but with even higher heights than RB12 than Leonard Fournette, because look, man, and all his highlights last year, when you watch Breece Hall in that Jets offense that's been just completely debacle, most of his explosive plays are with the ball in his hand and when he's out in open space. That's what we're getting with Breece Hall. Justin Fields, he had the highest check down rate last year. So there's going to be peppered with targets. There's going to be opportunity for there. Now, when it comes to short yardage, there may be a debate. Is it going to be Braylon Allen on the goal line? Is it going to be Breece Hall? Like, that's the only thing that I feel like I'm a little drawn back on, but I'm here for the targets. I'm here for the catches. This is a PPR league, half point PPR, what we're talking about, but I definitely think that Breece Hall still holds that value as an RB1, if not a low end RB1.
What about Donovan Edwards? Does he factor in at all?
Donovan Edwards. Now, I can't sit here and say that I'm a follower Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, I believe, where I feel like he's a hard-nosed runner.
Brothers asked me about him, so I'm like, I don't know.
He's a hard-nosed runner. Like, he's better than Isaiah Davis, like I haven't watched much of his tape, but when I did, it's more so of like he's always looking for the smoke. He's looking for the contact. Like, his eyes are never up. It's always in the chest of the linebacker that he's trying to go through. And I think that's a little risky play there, but I feel like this backfield will work out to be a discounted, like 1-2 punch, maybe like a Walmart great value version of Sonic and Knuckles, like I'm okay with that. I just want a piece of that,
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm not afraid of, drafting Breece Hall at all. That's a great, where we're seeing him fall, people giving up on him. I love it. And again, I had to beg somebody to keep him. I don't know why I have to do that, but I was doing it.
You shouldn't be begging them.
Whatever. Like, do it. One of my friends, a different friend who always takes my advice, he was doing his keepers and he had Breece Hall as one of, no, I'm sorry. He had the next guy, James Cook. He had James Cook. He's like, I'm keeping Cook. I'm keeping this guy. I'm keeping Cook, keeping Jaden Daniels. and then I'm keeping so-and-so. I forget who the third guy was. This is where I step in. And I'm like, hey, you're not going to keep Bucky Irving? He's like, oh, yeah, should I? I'm like, yeah. And it's guys that were drafted in rounds 6 or later. So anybody who was drafted in the 5th round or ahead of, so it's not like he can keep Saquon Barkley or Bijan Robinson or anybody like that, or Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm like, for two, like, you don't have to use, like, you have Bucky Irving and James Cook, which if you drafted that in a normal sense, you have a very good opportunity. But you got to remember, like, people can't keep Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. You will be taking a top. You had to let Cooper Kupp go. He was so bummed that he finally had to let the Cooper Kupp experience end. And I'm like, but like you said, you can romanticize what you had with Cooper Kupp and go out and do that. But I don't want to. James Cook is fine. I want to get into this though, because I want to know how you feel. Everybody will think I'm a homer for having DeAndre Swift this high. I love DeAndre Swift. They did not trade for a running back. They drafted a running back in the 7th round. Like, and Roschon Johnson is not going to end up, he's not going to be a factor. I love DeAndre Swift. I really do believe that if Ben Johnson wanted somebody else and barring a trade for somebody, it feels like DeAndre Swift's going to be the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I love Kyle Monangai. You know, he's like one of those deep sleepers, but he's going to complement DeAndre Swift in this backfield. And whoever it may be, maybe Roschon, maybe Kyle, who knows, but they're going to complement DeAndre Swift because we've already seen Swift in a Ben Johnson system. He had 70 targets that year. I mean, if you're going to tell me that's on the table or even more, then I'm absolutely in on DeAndre Swift because even with the bad scheme last year, even with the bad play calling, you know, things that just did not fall his way with the O-line struggles and everything else, DeAndre Swift was still a playmaker. He still showed the juice. He still was being a threat in the passing game. Like, he's still on the wheel route up the top of the line. I remember the game. Like, he just basically mossed the defender. And I'm like, this is DeAndre Swift. Like, this is that guy on this offense with this potential. Now, again, we keep hammering the table. We're going to keep hammering until people's heads understand that Ben Johnson's in the building. You have Caleb Williams as your quarterback. This offense is going to be electric. Why wouldn't you want a piece of that? I'm getting Swift as my RB2, RB3 in some of these leagues. And it doesn't even make sense sometimes when you think about it. Like, he's an RB1 on an exciting offense with a good quarterback and play caller. Why are we down on DeAndre Swift? Like, I honestly feel as though, like, people are going to sleep on him so much. There's not going to be much talk. They're going to be hyping up Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monangai. DeAndre Swift's going to probably end up as like a top 12 fantasy running back this year. Yeah. And I know there's not many spots, not many names that he can fit, but if he's not inside the top 12, he's going to be just staring at it or just posturing right there. So this is going to be such good value in drafts this summer on Swift because a lot of people are remembering his Eagles run, his exit out of, Detroit and stuff. And last year, they're all going to be down on him. So therefore, it's just chef kiss when I get him to my rosters this summer.
Yeah, an absolute great pick. I love going with DeAndre Swift. And I know, listen, that was LaQuan talking. That wasn't me. I'm not even going to sit here and add on to it because you're all going to think I'm biased anyway.
I'm not even a Bears fan.
But once again, for those of you who are just listening to the show, tier 3 include, and then again, you can mix and match these guys however you feel appropriate. Kyron Williams, Breece Hall, James Cook, DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, James Conner, a couple of old heads, Kamara, Joe Mixon, James Conner. Is it time to let those guys go, or is there still good value there?
Absolutely not, man. Especially with Joe Mixon, man. And I'll start there with him. This guy was the RB2 once he came back from injury. 21 fantasy points per game, and the only person above him was Saquon Barkley. So if you get Texans' offensive line on track, if you get CJ Stroud more weapons, which they have with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, you honestly have an offense that can function with Joe Mixon. We've seen him perform top-tier performances behind the Bengals' terrible O-line for so many years because they faced so many injuries as well. You're looking at Joe Mixon that has 300 touches on the table. Woody Marks is his backup running back. You're telling me Woody Marks is going to affect the production, the workhorse load that Joe Mixon has? Like, he's one of the most elusive running backs out there at his size. He's the goal line carrier that has a nose for the end zone. And if we're expecting the Texans to take a step forward in creating more scoring opportunities, Joe Mixon's the stealing drafts. Same thing with Alvin Kamara. I mean, Alvin Kamara had a career high in rushing yards last year. He was still explosive, still hitting those marks that we look for these older running backs to be on the decline, where he's still at his peak. Like, I feel like Alvin Kamara is in a situation where he just look around and be like, who are these guys? Like, I am the guy. I am him of this offense. I'm going to get the ball at least 70 times. So I don't understand the hate on Alvin Kamara. Like, I understand folks are like, well, Tyler Shuck. Well, Tyler Shuck is still a rookie. I mean, he's old enough to get his own insurance, but he's still a rookie at the end of the day. He's never played on this type of platform or level. So he's going to be dumping that ball off to one of his biggest playmakers to get the chains rolling to make this offense look presentable. So I don't get the Alvin Kamara hate. I don't get the Joe Mixon hate. James Conner, still a very good pass catcher as well last season. If you look at his receiving yards per catch, it looks like he's still out there running as if he's in a Steelers uniform. Like, Trey Benson, we all had high hopes for him. I really hope that he gets it together. He just didn't look like himself. He kind of looked like he was lost, but I definitely think this is James Conner's backfield. This is RB1 territory here with these steals that guys are not going in the first 3 to 4 rounds. And it's crazy to me that this is how ADPs are looking going into July, going into August. Like, if it's still like this, Rank, I'm coming away with RB1s way later than a lot of folks are.
Yeah, there's so much value. And real quick, as we're wrapping up here, let's go to the tier 4 real quick. And we're going to have to do a redo. Or we're going to have to do an add-on to this at some other point. And this is where, again, where we have some of the rookies starting to come through. Amarian Hampton, David Montgomery, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson, Quinshaw Judkins, Travion Henderson, like a lot of good rookies, a lot of guys. Pick one guy that stands out to you. Who are you targeting here in this tier 4? And there's also Brian Robinson Jr., Aaron Jones, Pollard, Pacheco, Travis Etienne, and Javonte Williams.
It has to be RJ Harvey here, Rank. I don't know if you've seen me in the fantasy streets, you know, screaming at the top of the mountains that RJ Harvey needs to be targeted. He's a guy that I'm targeting in that 5th round as an RB2, where I think the upside is incredible. Because when you hear Sean Payton talks about him, like, you see the blush, like he starts to get all excited, all bricked up, excited about talking about RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey is a real weapon that he's going to deploy in this 1-2 punch with J.K. Dobbins. If we all remember 2017, Alvin Kamara, the Mark Ingram years, that 1-2 punch, both of these guys finished as top 12 fantasy running backs. Both of these guys shared 11 rushing touchdowns. There's so much upside in this Broncos offense that I'm so all in on it that RJ Harvey, I could feel comfortable if I feel like I want to fade everybody else. All my guys, you know, in the first 4 or 5 rounds didn't go off the board how I wanted to. RJ Harvey could be my RB1 just based on how this offense is going to function with him in the passing game, and obviously how explosive he is. The home run ability is there for him. I just don't see how I don't leave any of these drafts this summer without RJ Harvey.
Yeah, and then J.K. Dobbins will ruin our lives. But whatever. It happened last season. It's gonna be okay. There is still a lot of stuff to talk about with the running backs. We'll have to do another special edition at some point down the road. Tomorrow, we are going to be doing the wide receivers and getting into that. And I know we spent a lot of time, and everybody's like, what about Saquon? What about, listen, go back and watch the show. We talked so many names. Go back and watch it and listen. And thanks so much for being here. So we're going to wrap it up right here. Tomorrow, we'll be doing the wide receivers, tight ends on Thursday. So come back to the Sick Podcast, whether it's the Rams or the Bears. You will find us here. Thank you so much. For LaQuan, I'm Adam. And Shane, go ahead and play us out.